Hi there, Joe DiSanto here. Thanks for joining me in another YouTube video. In this video, I'm going to start talking about Quicken Mac, and this is the first video I'm making specifically for Mac, and I'm going to go over some of the settings in the system. Essentially, preferences in the Windows version, these are called preferences. They call them settings in the Mac. And I'm going to walk you through the important ones, explain what they are, and help you get your software set up the way you want. Thanks. See you in the video. I'm Joe DiSanto, by the way. I'm an independent CFO and business consultant. I actually spent most of my career in Los Angeles building a few multi-million-dollar businesses, and I've since semi-retired, and now I help other businesses and individuals manage their money and plan better for their future. So if you're interested in small business, personal finance, and real estate advice, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks. Okay, so here we are in Quicken Mac. If you've seen any of my other Quicken videos, oftentimes I'm using the Windows Home and Business version, or Home Business and Rental Property version. Obviously, it looks very different. The general basics of what you're doing in the software and generally how it works and all that are the same. Probably 75% of the Windows videos could, direct you on how to do the same thing in the Mac. But not every video. The Mac does have some unique features of its own, and it also is missing some features that the Windows versions have, or the Windows, yes, you could say the Windows versions, but the one that I use. So this Quicken version is the new Quicken Home and Business version. When you're looking at Quicken and thinking about buying it, it basically has tiers. I think it's like Premier, Deluxe, and then Home and Business. For a long time, there was no Home and Business for the Mac. Now there is, but admittedly, it doesn't do nearly as much as the Home and Business on the for Windows. So I'm sorry about that. But anyway, to get into the point of this video, I want to go over the settings, and you actually find settings for the Quicken Mac version in a couple of areas. The primary area is over here under Quicken and Settings. So I'm going to walk you through this dialog box and what's in here, but then I'm also going to show you how you access some other settings that you're probably going to be looking for that for whatever reason are not in here. I'll say that in the Windows version, most all the quote-unquote settings are actually in the preferences pane there, but I don't know. They've done it a little bit differently in the Mac. So let's get started. So the general area of the settings dialog box is a few things. You can choose the appearance. There's three options. Use system appearance is basically if you're using the light look on your Mac, it's going to use that. If you're using the dark, it's going to use that. Or you can choose between the two. I like the light version. The home currency is the US dollar. You might be saying, hey, wow, does Quicken support multiple currencies? Yes, it does, actually. The only thing quickly I'll say about that is it's very unlikely that Quicken will connect to a foreign bank. So if you're using a multi-currency, you probably have to be importing transactions, in a very manual way, but that's a whole nother topic. Main window, show file, and then name in the title bar. So when this is on, you can see here, up here, you can see the file name. I turn that off. You can see that goes away. I like to have that on because Quicken is a database program, so when you're in it, you're actually looking at an actual file on your computer. Not always do you realize that, but if you can have multiple files, so in the case that you do, it's an easy way to double check which file you're in. Here you could try out new Quicken features, I guess, if you wanted to. I don't do that, even though probably I'd be a good candidate for that. Okay, next one here is the register. So the register is what you see behind me. I'm looking at a checking account there, and in the checking account register is where the transactions drop in and where you categorize them and so on, just like your checkbook register, of yesteryear. So here in the register box, there's some options of what you would want Quicken to do when it imports transactions and so on, and a few other things. So for category and appearance, you can either have a short name or a long name. So in my case, especially if you use my template, I have a lot of categories and subcategories and so on. So the long name shows you all the categories and subcategories separated by colons. I like that, so I leave on the long name, but obviously it does take up a little more space in the register. This option allows the creation of link transfers using the category field. We want that on because when you send money from one account to another, like a checking to a savings, the way we make that transfer happen in Quicken is by categorizing the transaction to the corresponding account of the transfer, and this will allow you to do that. So we're going to be able to move stuff from one account to the other. Splits automatically shows splits in the register. Splits are basically the fact that you can categorize one transaction split over multiple categories. And you might want to do that for a mortgage payment. When I buy stuff at Amazon and I buy 3 different items in one order, I'll do a split because maybe one's clothes and one's a book and one's I don't know what, you know. So these are splits. Now, being able to automatically show splits in the register, to be honest with you, I don't even know the difference of that. So I'm just going to keep that off, but you could play with that one. I just obviously double click in, edit details, and do splits here, and you can obviously do other things as well under this detail. Actually, I'm going to turn that on because I bet it will come in handy. Why not? Automatically show splits during reconciliation. We don't need to do that. Reconciliation is like something you might do at the end of every month to make you kind of compare Quicken against your bank statement and make sure you have everything in there correctly. I only reconcile every 6 months, but you don't really need to see splits in a reconciliation. It's really more about the total amount of each transaction. Okay, amount fields automatically insert decimal point. So if you check this, you can just type if it was $100.23, you would just type 10023. If this is off, you would type 100.23. I like doing the dot, so I keep that off. Mark reconciled transactions as reviewed. We're going to keep that on because if something is reconciled, it's going to have been reviewed. You know, what that means exactly is another video, but let's keep that on. Include accounts that automatically reconcile new downloaded transactions. Sure, you could do that, but I don't know what those accounts would be. Usually reconciling is a manual process. Not 100% on that one. Registered toolbar. So let's see. The registered toolbar we always want to show. I believe that's this guy right here. Automatically create rule when I correct a payee name. Okay, so Quicken, ultimately, as you use it more and more, you want to, what I call, train it to do things automatically. Namely, as transactions come into your register, you want them primarily to categorize things automatically and correctly, hopefully. You can also, though, have Quicken rename what comes through. When you download a transaction, you usually get what the retailer is, plus some numbers, maybe some gobbledygook. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not. That weird string of information that Quicken uses to actually make actions on, like auto categorization and so on, you can rename that to a shorter, more correct name. And renaming rules and memorize payees or Quickfill rules work in conjunction as a way to train Quicken to do things in a more automated way over time. So that's what these two things are referring to. And, I'll do a video on downloading stuff and renaming and all that, but we were going to keep automatically create rule when I correct payee, and we're going to apply the new renaming rule to existing and future transactions. For now, after you do your initial setup, we may come back and change this back. But if in that case, I'll talk about that in that video. Quickfill rules, which really should probably be called automatic categorization rules. In the Windows version, if you're used to that or have used that, it's called a memorize payee there. But we automatically want to create a rule when we edit a transaction. And when saving a new Quickfill rule, We're just going to save the category aspect as opposed to all fields like memo and price and things like that. That way it's a little bit easier for Quicken to know what it should do. Moving on to the sidebar settings. So the sidebar refers to this area here, which is also sometimes I call your net worth bar. It adds up all your accounts and gives you a total. Now imagine you have checkings and savings and brokerage accounts. You have your real estate like asset, the house value itself, plus the loan, your business accounts. The idea is you get absolutely everything in Quicken, and you can see all the time a sum total of what your net worth is. This file is just a test file, and for whoever this test person is, the net worth's not too good right now. So, some of the options here. Account activity indicators. Highlight accounts with new transactions. Highlight accounts with unviewed transactions. So I'm going to go with the bottom one because that sort of encompasses both new and unreviewed transactions. And all that does is actually put a little blue mark on new transactions after you download that have come into your register. We'll talk about it in more detail in that video. Displayed balances. So over here on the left, it displays the balance of the account in Quicken. But here, today's balance would essentially be all the transactions in your Quicken account up till today, right? Projected balance would be all the transactions up till today, and if you preemptively entered anything into the future, like I put my mortgage payment in automatically, it goes in 10 days before it's actually going to come out of my account, so I can see my forward-looking balance. I always have projected balances on because I use Quicken to kind of forecast my cash flow, and I want to see what the balances would be in 15 days after a bunch of things have come out, like my credit card payments or whatever. Online balance is going to show what your bank balance is. Generally, your balance of today and your online balance should be the same for the most part if you're using Quicken correctly and you have everything in there. But I like to have the projected balance in the bar here. So you can turn things on and off in the bar. So here you can see under banking, we'll have checking accounts. But if I had a savings account in there, here I'll throw one in. Savings, test savings. It's going to have this little header and then accounts under that, So if I have group balances, you can see that gives the balance for the entire section. If I have subgroup balances, that gives the balances for the checking, and then account balances is the account itself. I usually have an account and group. Foreign balances in home currency. Back to the currency thing. If you had an account in here in a different currency, you could choose to have the value of that account in the accounts bar here be in USD or the currency of the account. I like to have that in home currency because I want to see the US dollar equivalent of the account. Then there's the total, which is your net worth. Show cents or not. I show cents. I'm kind of neurotic. And then accounts to display, there's only 3 options here: closed, hidden, or separate. So once you have an account, it's open and visible. There are other things you can do with accounts. You can choose to hide an account, like in a different dialog box in the account settings, or you can close the account, and just kind of like retire it from Quicken, though all the data stays in Quicken. Really, closed and hidden are nearly the same thing. Separate means it's an account that's not closed or hidden, but will come in. There'll be a heading here that says separate accounts, and those accounts won't be included in your net worth. I have, for an example, I have like a college fund account for my kid. I keep that separate because that money's committed to the college fund, and it's not really my money anymore. It's like his money to use for college. So I keep it separate so it doesn't calculate into my net worth. So you can choose to show closed accounts or hidden accounts or separate accounts. I generally would only show separate accounts. Okay. Budget. So Quicken has a budgeting feature. It allows you to put a budget in Quicken, and then after you're using it, you can pull a report that shows a comparison of your spending to your budget. So the budget area, there's a few options in here: layout, bar style, highlight, and cents. Don't worry about these until you start using the budget thing. I'll do a video on that. Backup area. So automatically create local backups when quitting Quicken. This we want to do. Quicken, like I said, it's a database program. So locally installed, and there's actually a file that is holding all the info that you input into Quicken. It's not web-based, even in that case, a web-based thing is a database program. It's just you don't see the database file. But we want to back up our database file. It can get corrupt just like anything on a computer. It's rare, but always good to have backups. Plus, when you start using Quicken, sometimes you add in new accounts and you screw something up and you're like, oh man, I don't know what I did. And you're like, I wish I could go back to when I started today. And you'll be able to with a backup. So I usually have this checked, automatically create local backup when quitting Quicken. So every time you close it, a backup will be created. Keep the last however many files, what this means is how many backups do you want Quicken to keep? Like if my file itself is like almost a gig because it's 25 years of data. So I don't want to have 75 of them because that'd be 75 gigs of storage. I keep 5. And then you can choose the backup folder. Now, Quicken makes an automatic backup folder in a weird place. Application support Quicken backups. What I do is wherever I'm storing the database file, which in the case of this one is here in this folder on my desktop called Quicken Mac Example, I'll make a folder in there called backup, and I will choose that. And again, being it's a database file program, you can move the database file wherever. If you just install Quicken, open it up, and start using it, you won't even realize there's a database. It just puts it in that automatic place under library application support. It's kind of weird. And then it always opens the last database that was open. So if you never make another file or do anything, it's always just going to open, the one you started originally, and you wouldn't even know, there's a file, but I'm telling you there is, so now you're in the know. Okay, security, set password. So currently, I don't have a password set on this database file, meaning like when I open Quicken and it goes to open the last database that was open, which says this, there's no password to get into the file. But I recommend you putting a password on because, I don't know, maybe someone steals your computer and they see Quicken, at least they won't be able to get into your Quicken data and all your financial info unless they know the password to the file. So I would set a password. Okay, connected servers. I'm going to do a video about buying Quicken. It's probably already up, though I'm making this one first. And I explain how Quicken works now, where as I say, it's a locally installed program with a database file, but they have this new thing where you can upload your data to a portal and actually access your data and use Quicken from a web-based access. They're sort of straddling the web-based and old school world. I assume they're, inevitably going to make this program completely web-based, but we'll see. But in here, when you buy Quicken, you create a user and password just for like your account, go change your credit card and that kind of thing. But that user and password is also how you access your portal. And Quicken will connect just one database file, your main database file, to your portal. And also, when you start using Quicken, it's going to ask you to log in. So it does that sort of in lieu of a serial number. So in this case, I'm logged into my Quicken account here. And here, I've told Quicken essentially which database file, if I were to have more than one, which one do I want to be syncing to the portal? You can only sync one database file to the portal. You can switch which database file you sync to the portal, but that would just override all the info that's there with the information from your new database file. So most everyone only has one database file. It's connected to their account. It's syncing, and that's that. But in here, that is where we could possibly change that stuff. And actually, I sell this template starting a database file that has all my categories and stuff in it. And if you were to buy that, many people do because they don't want to like take the time to re-edit all the categories just like I do it. We would go in here and we would connect the template file. That's actually why this says template. I'm looking at a version of it. And we would overwrite whatever you did initially out of the box with Quicken with the template file, and we'd connect it all up in here. So go look at my template file video if that sounds intriguing. Okay, downloaded transactions. Automatically improve the quality of downloaded payee names and categories. Now, I don't know why this really isn't in register. I feel like it should be, but it's here. So Quicken will take, and if you recall from the register, I talked about when we download transactions, there's a bunch of bank data that comes through. And you might see this when you go into your bank and look at a transaction. It might say like, I don't know, Stop and Shop, or I don't know what region of, I'm going to go, that's a grocery store, but I'm going to go with, try to go with Chipotle. And it might be just Chipotle, you know, and it might be Chipotle number 6944222, whatever. Quicken has some database it looks to, and it will attempt to rename some of that stuff to like a shorter, more correct, simplified name to get rid of the gobbledygook. Problem is it does it sometimes well, sometimes not well, sometimes not at all. And I find it's easier not to have Quicken do that. Turn this off. And you do renaming rules yourself over time. I don't like the way Quicken just does it kind of weirdly and haphazardly. I think it's not necessary. Quicken will also automatically categorize a lot of things out of the box. Sometimes it gets it right, sometimes it gets it wrong, and like you need to retrain it if it does anything wrong to do it right. Again, another video. Okay, so keep that off. Use posted date for matched transactions instead of the date you entered manually. Yeah, I would do this. The posted date is basically the date of the transactions on the bank's website. You can actually change the date in your register, and Quicken holds on to both of those. But when you preemptively maybe enter something in the register, Quicken might download stuff and try to make a match with other stuff that's already in there. And it's going to work better if you have this on and use the posted date. Automatically update investment quotes every 60 minutes. Sure, once you get into adding in your brokerage accounts, you'll also add in all the securities in your brokerage accounts. Quicken stores all those securities and will create a price history for those securities over time. It goes to some online database and gets, info. You could put this on, why not? Usually when I go into Quicken for whatever day I'm in there, I update everything right when I start, and those things get updated as well, but I guess we could update investment quotes on its own. Why not? Quicken Life Hub. This is a whole new thing. Quicken Life Hub. They just came out with this. I don't know much about it. Obviously, it's grayed out for now. I think you have to be subscribed. You'll learn a little bit more about Life Hub. Okay, mobile web and alerts. So over here, if you recall me saying that Quicken's been straddling both the local install program and web-based application world with this new web-based portal. Well, what it's doing is it's syncing information from your database file up to the portal. You can actually then go log into the portal and do work. You can enter transactions, you can update stuff there, and it'll sync backwards as well. There's also a phone app where you can, look at balances, do whatever. You can also take pictures of receipts and attach them to transactions, and it'll sync that in as well. This is where you say to have sync on or off. Now, I have it off because I don't like using the web-based thing, and I don't use my phone. I just like to sit at my computer and do it the old-fashioned way. And when you have sync on, every now and then you're working, it'll stop and then it'll sync and it just like becomes annoying. So I have it off, but I could just turn it on anytime and it'll just go upload all the info if I wanted to. So that's what this turning sync on or off is about. The final thing here is messages and offers. These are the emails I want to send you. I just unsubscribe from all those. Okay, so that's the settings dialog box, and that's most of the stuff. But I'm going to show a couple other things that for whatever reason are not in there and probably should be. For example, under view here, you can change the font size of your register and your toolbar here. You can change the font, you can change the row size. Actually, let me go in here where there's a transaction. It's under view, register text and settings. You can make this row tiny if you want to see more rows. I like to have a little more space. I keep it at 14, but you know, this will go bigger too. Should probably leave that for like doing my videos, make it easier for people to see. So that's a setting that you can change. That's under view, and there's a few options here. You can just hit back to default. You can just increase using that button. So Quicken gives you like multiple ways to do a lot of things, which I like because you can just do the way that you like. Now, another setting in here is this toolbar for each register. If you right click it, it'll allow you to turn other things on and off. What I like is what you see here, which is payee. The business thing is for home and business, and you selecting which business a transaction is for. Category. I like to go payment, clear, deposit, and balance. You can also go amount. So instead of doing a payment or credit, it does a positive or negative amount for amount. Over here in view, you can change those things as well. Now the register, show, hide, the toolbar, that's down here. I would keep that up. That actually is also in the settings dialog box, if you recall though. The inspector, I guess that's a transaction inspector. Never used that before. Account settings, which is the same, which is where actually you can make things hidden or close them or whatever. And also where you can change like the name of an account and so on. So I have an account selected and then I hit account settings, but you can also right click and go to account settings here. So, but that's another kind of settings thing. Hide and show accounts. So you can do the hidden and keep separate and close under this kind of full dialog box of accounts here if you want to do it that way. But again, you can right click on each account over here, go to account settings and do it from within the individual accounts thing. If you want to delete an account, you would go here. Now, if you delete an account, you delete all of its data. So generally, you would never do that if it's been around for a while because you don't want all that data to disappear to Quicken. You would just hide it or close it. You would never delete it. But if you create a new account and you're like, oh, I messed that up, I want to delete it, you could just completely delete it. So over here in window, each of these things will be in some other video or have a video on and of itself, but these are dialog boxes here that show a variety of things. Your connection status, which is like how many accounts are literally connected to accounts online and then there are any errors. You could have pays and rules. That dialog box is related to what I was talking about in the settings dialog box where we set some basic settings for how this works. Well, this is where you would actually see your memorized payees, renaming rules, and Quickfill rules. Tags is another secondary categorization type thing. I'll do a video on those. They're very handy, but your list of tags would be there. Categories, that's the kind of main level of how you take in transactions and then put them to categories so that they show up in a report. The template I mentioned that I sell offers my categories already set up the way you often see them in my videos. And Quicken out of the box does it its own way. So if you like what I do and you want to replicate it, you'd have to edit them and do all this work. So my template might save you a half a day or a day. But this is where you would do adding, subtracting, editing, merging of categories in the category dialog box. Actions. Let me be honest with you. I don't know anything about actions. That's a Mac only thing. I'm generally in the Windows version. I do Mac for some clients, but I've been doing the Windows version for like 25 years, so I know everything about it. But this might be new. I've never really used actions or heard of them before. Securities is the list, as I mentioned, when you set up investing accounts, you download your positions or your securities. They keep going into this compiled list, and in there you can, in the security entry, that price history gets collected and so on. So this is where you can see, edit, and do whatever with your securities. And then currency, if you decide or do live internationally or whatever, and you're going to have an account in a different currency, this will be the list of all the currencies you're using in your different accounts, and it will update and keep the exchange rate of the currency updated. So that's pretty cool. Kind of like it keeps stock security prices updated. So those are some things there. And let's see. That's pretty much it for like the different settings and so on. I will say again, before you connect accounts and start downloading things, I do think it's important to kind of get your settings right and particularly decide about these two things here. Make sure those are on. Make sure this is on. And over here, make sure this is off, this is on, and it's best to get all that kind of set up before you start downloading transactions so that the whole setup process is a little bit easier. So there you go. I hope that was helpful. I think I say that in every single video, but every time I truly hope it was helpful. And I will catch you in the next Quicken for Mac video. Later.